not the best offensive line in the league in front of him. And you just went out and got him another big wide receiver. You drafted him one last year. He should be performing at that level. And everybody goes crazy because he's like, fringe top 10. Eric, I think that's another problem. I don't necessarily think Dallas should not pay Dak and pay Zeke. I just don't think that Dak is worth $30+ million a year.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean,
do you think he's worth the same money as a Carson Wentz?
No, not at this point. Again, he had a great rookie year, but there was so much regression in the past 2 years that I mean, look, if I'm Dallas, I'm certainly hesitant. Now, quarterbacks don't grow on trees. So if you've seen things in practice and workouts and other ways with Dak Prescott in terms of in terms of Dallas Cowboys, what they've seen privately that leads them to believe that he has all the skills and talent to do what they need him to do, maybe that's a different story. But if you're stacking him up against the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers and the Patrick Mahomes and the Drew Brees and, on and on, Carson Wentz and others in the league, he's not there.
No, I mean, when you start looking at, even a guy like Derek Carr, he's about $25 million. He's looks like he's about the 9th paid guy in terms of average salaries per year. Stafford's at $27 million. Look, if they got him in that range, I could understand that because he's performed at a level. He's got playoff wins. He's got them to the playoffs. He's got a couple division titles. But to think that he needs to be up in the 30s, like he's going to be up there with Wentz at $32 million, Rodgers at $33.5 million, that's where they think that he needs to be parked, even a Matt Ryan at $30 million, there's no way. And that is going to destroy their cap. So, look, we've already seen the Packers have to get rid of Mike Daniels. They're having to make cuts off this team. They had to let Randall Cobb go. They are outside of one guy in Adams. They're sort of a mess at the wide receiver position because, again, they can't pay anybody because you've got so much of your cap wrapped up in Aaron Rodgers, and he's Aaron Rodgers, and we're talking about Dak Prescott. So you're talking about a guy who can go out and win games with his arms versus a guy that needs a really good running game and a really good offensive line in order to be productive. So that's the problem that the Cowboys have, Eric, is they just have too many mouths to feed at this point. So, I mean, Zeke's in Cabo? He might be staying there for a while at this point so they can figure this cap thing out because, like you said, with the CBA, I think the bigger problem is, and I think it's a pretty easy fix, it just seems like running backs shouldn't be held to the 4+1 year contract in if they're a first round pick or a full 4 years in rounds 2 through 7. It feels like for the running backs, they should be able to sign a 2 or 3 year deal and be able to get back in because their shelf life is different than a lineman, different than a wide receiver, different than a quarterback. Like you said earlier, those guys have the chance to have 10, 11, 12-year careers. Running backs, we're looking at Adrian Peterson like he's a dinosaur out there running around because it's so rare. In a few years, we're going to look at guys like David Johnson and be like, God, he's so old now. And that's just the way the running back position is, where you see a guy like Larry Fitzgerald and he's year 16 he's coming up. No running back's going to be able to do that and perform at the level that Fitzgerald does as a wide receiver versus what running backs do. So I just think that's the easiest fix, is just to not lock these guys in, give them a chance to go out on the open market. Look, if you want to get another running back every 3 years, go for it. But you shouldn't get to just use a guy up and just, throw him away like he's a Kleenex tissue and just go get the next one. If you're going to use guys up like that, the league needs to do something to protect itself, and the Players Association needs to step up and do that because, again, Michael Thomas just got 5 years and $100 million. Running backs aren't getting close to that kind of money, and they're not going to play anywhere as long as Michael Thomas. So, Eric, you talked about it. Right. The guys that are sitting there, Tyreek Hill, you've got Julio Jones waiting. Did Michael Thomas's contract, you think, just set the market for these guys where they're just licking their chops now? Like, yeah, we want $100 million and $60+ million of it better be guaranteed as the starting point.
Well, I think if you're those two guys, you have a big argument to make for that. Tyreek Hill is a game breaker. There's probably no wide receiver in the league.
Did you say an arm breaker or a game breaker?
Oh, gosh. Well, hopefully he's just a game breaker. We don't know for sure if he's an arm breaker or not.
He boxes.
Or if that was his girlfriend.
He boxes with his son, by the way, just so you're aware. He boxes with his 3-year-old. So, I know you got a young son. You might want to go ahead and box with him. I guess you can make him stronger and have an alibi. I don't know how that works.
I've definitely never come close to breaking his arm. I can tell you that, but neither has my wife. So, who knows what the situation is with Tyreek Hill, and he's not on suspension. So if you're him, you have a big argument to make that you're a game breaker. You are one of a kind in the league. I mean, it kind of reminds me of when Devin Hester was returning kicks. There just was guys that just can't do what he can do. And I think a Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's small. He's not built like a typical wide receiver, but he can get over the top of a defense better than anyone in the league. And then when you're the Chiefs and you have guys like Kelsey and Sammy Watkins and guys who can play in the middle and underneath, he's going to demand for the situation that he's in, especially a guy like Patrick Mahomes who can throw it 75 yards from a standing position. Tyreek Hill is in a perfect position to ask for a lot. Now, the same, I think, could be said for a Julio Jones, because a lot of wide receivers have come and gone through the Atlanta system. Julio Jones seems to be sort of the foundational point of the Matt Ryan era of the past 5 to 6 to 7 years. And I think he's a pretty dependable guy. Now, he's had some big drops in key moments, especially in playoffs, deep in playoffs and in the Super Bowl that, yeah, I mean, you could point to moments or anecdotal type of things. But Julio Jones has put up phenomenal numbers, and I think Julio is in that category of guys like a Michael Thomas who can demand first-round fantasy football type money, right? I mean, that's where Julio Jones is if you're drafting a wide receiver in fantasy football. And as stupid as that sounds, I think that's sort of the way I look at it. If you're looking at guys like QBs and running backs and wide receivers who you're thinking about in fantasy football of like, it's first or second round, and if I don't get that guy, I'm disappointed, then he's worth a lot of money. And I think, the Falcons have to look at it that way too, that he's a game breaker. He's a game changer, more than anything. And he's really a safety blanket for a Matt Ryan who they are invested in.
Tyreek's in a tough spot because of what he's got going on. I think that does hurt him at the negotiation table, and it could put language in there. I don't know what the CBA will allow, but if I'm running that team and I'm trying to write that contract up, I'm doing everything I can to put language in to protect myself in case all these alleged rumors about Tyreek Hill start to come true, because we know what he had going on in college, and he doesn't appear like he's grown past that with just the people he's around in his life, if he does have people that are trying to blackmail him and extortion and whatever. So I think that does hurt him a little bit, but I think the bigger problem for the Chiefs is they have to be looking at what's going on in Dallas right now, because Patrick Mahomes is entering year 3. Next year, we get to year 4, which will probably be the year that he's going to sign an extension. Everything has said that he could be the first $200 million NFL player. So if that happens, the Chiefs are going to be in some cap purgatory as well. So they have to be careful in how they structure deals, where their cap space is. Could they do more money loaded up front this year and next year before the Mahomes deal kicks in? How long can they keep these two paired up together? How long is Tyreek Hill going to be able to stay on the field? So I think that hurts him. Julio Jones is the guy that's got to be happy, because he hasn't been in trouble. He had a year last year where he stayed relatively healthy for them. He's by far and away Matt Ryan's favorite target. So I think he's a guy that can ask for something close to that, because if you look at two wide receivers that are very close in terms of just the amount of volume that they get and how their quarterbacks lean on them, it's Breeze and Michael Thomas, and then Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. So
right.
I look for his deal to be very close to that, or definitely reset from what they were thinking. His patience may actually pay off, where he didn't rush and say, like, no, I need a deal right now just because last year DeAndre Hopkins signed a huge deal. He kind of waited, and now the market's sort of come to him, where if he gets something close to that, it's going to be, I think, substantially more than he would have got if he would have signed earlier in the offseason and forced them, because he would have probably got closer to Hopkins money versus now Michael Thomas resetting the wide receiver market, getting 60+ million guaranteed. So you're right. Both those guys in good spots. I think Julio's probably in the better spot just because he doesn't have the rap sheet. He is up there in age more, but I think what Tyreek has gone through is going to affect him when he gets to the negotiation table. I think it has to play into that at this point.
Sure. Now, Justin, I got to ask you, because this is a great time to kind of think about what would be the best case scenario for the NFL players. And I know that they have 53-man rosters, and that actually may get increased a little bit in future CBAs, because if they're able to add 5 or 7 players to a weekly roster, that helps you not use up guys as much, not break them down as fast. Now, What I was going to say, though, is that with a 53-man roster, that's way different than a 12-man NBA roster, first of all. But the NFL is an absolute cash cow, billions and billions of dollars. Revenue sharing could be increased for a pool of money to pay players better deals or guaranteed deals. So in a perfect scenario, do you feel that NFL contracts should be more like MLB or NBA contracts where it's guaranteed money, maybe plus incentives? Again, I was talking to some of my friends about this and talking about both sides of the coin. And some of them are kind of like where you're at, where they're siding with the players saying, you know what? It's okay that players are asking for this or holding out, because the NFL has they can cut them. They can just absolutely cut ties with them and half their money is gone.
For sure. The NFL is the one sport that you would think would have the guaranteed deals. I'd have to go back and research of how they even got to this point. I mean, think about the deals we've talked about. So you've got John Wall, who's getting ready to walk into a 4-year, $171 million extension. And I don't even know how many times now he's torn his Achilles. And if he was an NFL player, the team would be coming to him saying, look, you can either take this pay cut or we're done with you, because, you know, there's only so much of this that's guaranteed.
Right.
The NBA, that $171 million, he's getting paid regardless of if he ever steps back onto the court. The NFL, like you said, these guys, once they get through that guaranteed money and the team doesn't have to eat a ton of dead money, and even the Giants were willing to eat some to get Odell Beckham out of town. But once they get through that, they can do whatever they want. They can ask guys to take pay cuts. They can restructure guys' deals. So these guys have to strike while the iron is hot. These guys have to try to strike while they have any bit of leverage that they can, because once they get to a certain point when they've blown through that guaranteed money and the team can get rid of them and go into the draft or go get somebody else in free agency that's much cheaper and get 3 or 4 guys versus what they were paying one, that's become the issue. So I think if they were going to change anything, what you would see would probably be what we're seeing the trend in the NBA is shorter deals, and then you'd have the money, more guaranteed money in there. But you wouldn't see these deals where guys are getting, you know, like, for example, Michael Thomas's deal, it's 5 years and $100 million. I don't know yet all the terms, but just say the $60 million's in the first 3 years. Well, he might not even see $61 million through $100 million. He may never even see that, because it's just basically, it's just funny money that the team can play with at that point, where they could be like, okay, you know what? We've kind of used you up. You know, you're more like a Demaryius Thomas now after, 3+ years and getting all these targets and work. You're just not worth 18, 19, $20 million a year. We'll just get rid of you. So if I was the players and the league wanted to go to 17 or 18 games, I would be like, okay, we'll do that, but we want 80 to 100% of our money guaranteed on every deal, or shoot for the moon and say every dollar we want guaranteed. Yeah. And then that would fix some of this. And again, I think I would go back to, when you're drafting these guys, try to change some of the language where, maybe it's for a guaranteed deal. It's 3 years of guarantee for the first round pick. And then year 4 is where the team can do that 4th year option. And guys drafted in the 2nd round to 7th round, maybe they're on 2-year deals or 3-year deals at the most, where you give guys flexibility. If they come in and perform really well, that they get a chance to get paid. What I don't like about the NFL is guys can come in and you get a steal in the 3rd round, and that guy comes in and immediately performs, and you're starting him for the next 4 years before he'll even get to his next contract. And I think that's one of the problems that I have, where those guys get slotted and they can't get. The NBA is only 2 rounds. Those guys have an opportunity to sign a lot bigger deals, get into their rookie extensions, and they're making a ton more money. If I was the NFL players and that's on the deal for the owner's side, Eric, that's the first thing I'd be asking for, is more guaranteed money and shorter deals for rookies. All right, Eric, let's keep it on the wide receiver front here. Let's talk about an injury, and it's an injury that's kind of crept up now for the Bengals over the last few years. A.J. Green, once again, he's injured. This time it's an ankle injury. Initially wasn't thought to be too bad. Then there's some ligament damage in there. It looks like he's going to miss a few games to start the season. But Eric, this Bengals team, what they looked like a few years ago as a team that could compete for the AFC North division, be a playoff team, maybe have a chance to win a playoff game, it felt like, every year. And they finally got Marvin Lewis out of town to seem like maybe they had a chance. But they are such a team that's stuck in mediocrity right now. At what point does this team need to entertain trading a guy like A.J. Green? And again, starting the rebuild process, getting that cap room, maybe getting a couple draft picks, trying to go get the next guy. or do they just try to ride this wave out and hope that the new coaching staff, new direction can give them new life?
Well, I don't know what value he has anymore. I mean, he's just never healthy.
I can't stay on the field.
Yeah. So I feel bad for the guy. I mean, rumor has it that they were playing on a subpar practice field anyway. So